This is the HX Collective Self Channel, where we explore the relationship we have with ourselves. In today's conversation with my guest, Alycia Sutor, she reflects on the journey of self discovery and the impact this journey has had on the human experience. The HX Collective explores the human experience through three main channels of life: work, relationships, and self. With raw, authentic conversations, the podcast investigates how challenges can become powerful teachers, leading to personal growth and deeper connections. Rooted in humanity-centered design, each episode reflects a commitment to doing good and doing well, featuring diverse voices and generational perspectives. Expect gripping stories of struggle and success, with thought-provoking discussions and concrete tools and tactics that encourage you to rethink your relationship with distress, helping you to establish your full human experience. This is the HX Collective channel. All right, so as we think about our final lens, we talk about the elevating the human experience as it relates to one's self. And there certainly has been much said about self-care, and I'm so glad that you quoted and gave us some insights on some of those mental health statistics, and just the importance of caring for our total well-being isn't just about the physicality of diet and nutrition. It really is really caring for our minds and investing in the elevation of our human experience for ourselves. Why would you say now is a time for us to have a renewed view, a fresh look at what does it mean to be flourishing in ourself, in our self-care?
Oh, yeah. This is probably where I've been spending the most time recently, because I find that present circumstances can quickly set me off into this spiral of anxiety, depression, hysteria. And so I have been really working on the notion of well-being or flourishing from a space of how do I cultivate an interiority of stability and strength. And it's not just things like meditation and, prayer, although certainly those are pieces of it. But I want to know that I have built both a container and a muscle, so that when life out here on the outside world gets really chaotic and crazy and incomprehensible, that I have an interior place to go to that grounds me and anchors me, that no one else can actually take away, so that I can, as one of my favorite teachers right now, Margaret Wheatley, likes to say, so that I can see clearly, so that I can therefore act wisely. And that takes practice. And it's a skill and a place that you're building, that you have to build. So I've been finding lately that I have been taking a lot of mentoring from indigenous wisdom, from spiritual leaders, from certainly mental health practitioners, but it's a lot of interiority work that I feel like is really both serving me well. It's getting tested daily, but serves me well. And I feel like it just gives me a place that I can go to and trust and rely on, no matter where I go.
First of all, I love that you just added a new word to our lexicon, interiority. I've not heard that word, but I love the presence of what that means. You also highlighted something that reminded me of some work research that I have been exposed to over time by Dr. Viktor Frankl. And he, for those who don't know his work, he, in his youth, was captured and a part of a concentration camp during the Holocaust. And unlike many of the people with whom he was in the concentration camp, he did not perish. And it was often asked of him, later in life, he went on to become a doctor and just a huge impact player in life and in the world. And one of the things that he said that has been so poignant, and I'd love for you to reflect on this, because I think this interiority is embedded within this, is he said that the one thing that he did not do during his time of being imprisoned is he never, ever gave his captors his choice of response, that he could not control his circumstances. He could not control all the suffering that was being bestowed upon him, but he could choose his response. And there have been so many times that when I know my own experience, where you kind of dig deep and think, I get the choice. It's, all the choices, it may still be awful choices, but I still get to choose how I'm responding, and somebody can't take that from me. Can you speak a little bit more about that when you think about interiority and having that sense of stability and choice,
Yeah,
how important that is in human flourishing?
yeah. I am familiar with Viktor Frankl, and he's another person from whom I am drawing upon
Okay.
in his writing and work. And it all points to me again. I think it's both a place and it's a muscle, right? That you have to both build and you have to strengthen. And part of the place in the muscle, part of that work, or part of the reason why I think interiority is so important, is that it helps protect us from unnecessary suffering. It gives us a place of refuge. And I think that there is a lot of suffering that is unavoidable. And I think that there is some suffering that is, we just have to go through. But there's a lot of suffering that we inflict upon ourselves because it comes from a sense of fear, right? And fear is usually connected to a future state where we're worried, or we have an anxiety, or, right, a sense of loss of control about what might happen next or may not happen next. And so I think that part of what Viktor Frankl talks about is building the ability that he's going to let go of some of that unnecessary fear so that he can approach what he can control for in the moment, which is, in this case, his response to his captors, his own attitude, his own belief. And I think, one of the things that I have found interestingly in some of the things I've been learning and listening about is this notion of also releasing ourselves from hope, which I thought when I first read it was like, so hope, right? If we live in
Yeah.
hope, that's like a third of the thing that is so important to hold on to. And I think hope is not giving up the belief that whatever happens, I have the ability to cope, or it will ultimately be okay, perhaps. But it's the detachment that a particular outcome has to occur for me to feel like I can keep going on. And so I really love the notion of, again, creating that space interiorly, and the muscle requires learning to let go of things, or to hold very, very loosely to most things. And I find that when I go back to that practice and that skill building and that construction of space, that I am much more grounded no matter what I'm hearing is happening on the outside. And I have a feeling that's going to continue to be a really important need in the coming years and months for me.
So powerful. Alicia, I know what a voracious reader you are. And so, in an attempt to flex, that I've actually read a book recently, but it was a good one. And it's one you may have on your radar as well. Henry Cloud's book, Necessary Endings.
Yes,
And
love him.
so much of what you're describing is reminiscent of some of the things I took away from that book.
Yeah.
And that part of human flourishing is knowing when to let go of hope. And when you stop investing in things and keep yourself in that perpetual state of, disconnection from reality, that the person who really ends up suffering the most is yourself. And that's, again, when you're recognizing that it is valuable to know how to have the courage to call it, and have the strength and capacity to work through what can be really, really hard in the moment, but ultimately creates capacity for growth and capacity for more room for the values and things that you want. Any final words of encouragement as we think about human flourishing with self, and as we think about this interiority that you're describing? Any additional considerations that our audience should be looking at as we think about our elevated self-care and our elevated human experience?
I think if I were to step back and I think about flourishing, there's this maybe assumption we have that flourishing should be all about being happy, and it should be easy, and it should be spontaneous, and it's like traipsing off into a field of flowers, and it just happens. And I actually think that flourishing requires a lot of hard work and moving beyond things that feel comfortable and investments in things that I'm doing now so that I have, again, the containers or the skills or the muscles or the right abilities later when things are not as easy or happy or joy giving. And so I think it's flourishing requires intentionality. It requires work. It requires going through dark spaces and places as much as it does the positive stuff that we attach to flourishing and well-being. And the more we're willing to dive in and embrace all of those hard things, there's an amazing element of beauty and joy and energy that is, I think, also infinite that comes with it. And so I would just encourage people to get curious, right? And to engage and perhaps dive in a little bit deeper than we normally would want to do, because I think our desire is to back off as soon as things start to become a little hard or uncomfortable. And flourishing is about embracing uncomfort or discomfort.
What an awesome conversation we've had. And, as I think about the work of the HX Collective, so much of what we're aiming to do is to create content that allows people to hold a little bit of space to contemplate. Again, curiosity is the through line of this conversation for sure today. And as we think about telling our stories and giving our perspectives and sharing our vantage point around what it means to elevate the human experience, I think there's so many takeaways for today. First of all, this isn't just the feel good. It's all about soft things, purpose and meaning, that there are economic reasons why institutions and organizations and businesses really can do well as they're doing good in their workplace. So financially can be successful and do the right thing by the human experience. When we think about the nature of relationships and what it means to really place yourself in scenarios and conditions with people who may be fantastic teachers, even though first blush, they don't seem like people that would necessarily you naturally engage or traffic with, much like your Prisoners Entrepreneurship program that you spoke so lovely about, and also about perspective. And then, of course, this recognition of what it means to have self-care and to think about the interiority work. As we think ahead and as we'll have more conversations in front of us, any final thoughts about what it means to be a part of the collective that is focused on HX, on the human experience, and as we're united in our desire to elevate the human experience? Any
God.
final words for everyone to consider?
Yeah, for sure. I would say come and continue to build out this community. I like to say everything great starts with a relationship and gets better in community. And certainly that is the case with the HX Collective. And how amazing to know, Deb, because of you and your interest in putting a stake in the ground, that this is something that you cared enough to hold space for and to invite people in, that we have a community. We don't have to do this by ourselves or alone, or right. And there are so many people who are open and ready to be in relationship around this particular very important topic.
That's great. Well, thank you, my friend. More to come. Can't wait for our next conversation. Love you much.
Me too. Love you too. Bye.
Thanks for being here. If today's conversation sparked something in you, we hope you'll carry it forward with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Subscribe to the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep exploring what it means to be fully human.